Welcome to The First Turn. I'm your host, Hyena, and today, Llama and I are talking about This Week in Warhammer. If you like what you hear, give us a like, comment, subscribe, or share, or let us know if there's something you'd like to hear us talk about. Alright, let's get to it.
Well, welcome to The First Turn. I'm Hyena.
I'm Llama.
And today we're talking about some Warhammer stuff, some topics.
Yeah.
News-wise, a lot of Kill Team this week.
Kill Team.
Good gravy. There's plenty of spotlight type of things for the new edition of it.
Right.
Where they're trying to give a little bit of an overview of what's going on with the different, not even call them, I'd call them Grand Alliances, honestly. That's kind of how they're presented, you know? You've got your Imperium, you've got your Space Marines, you've got your Xenos, you've got your Chaos. Like they're kind of like Age of Sigmar's Grand Alliances, really, of how the interests align, sort of. But they've been going through those kind of articles and showing off, like, this is how these armies play, this is how, the common theme between these lists, like here's Arbites, plus here's the Voidsmen, plus here's, whatever, Agents of the Imperium, here's the Inquisitors, whatever. They kind of have been doing that sort of thing. So it's an interesting read if you want to check the articles out. But it's not high impact article. It's not high impact, news.
But it is a very accessible game for people who only want to buy a unit of guys and play in a 40K setting.
And like we say, it is a way to update old kits.
Yep.
And allow them to get away with, call it, releasing things out of current cycles. It's not coming alongside a book. It's not coming along with a major faction update. It's a one-off thing that they can just breathe some new life into an army that needs it. But it's not going to be dedicated major resources.
No.
So I like it.
Because we're in a bit of a slow patch where once the Blood Angels released, which their street date for the Codex isn't yet, but people got early access to the special one,
which we see with pretty much any of these army boxes. Right, we get a few weeks of advanced knowledge because the book comes out and it's in your hands. But it's not street legal. It's not tournament legal. It's whatever for a few weeks until the book comes out on its own.
And from what we gather, we've got some locals who did pick up that set, and Blood Angels seem very strong, but not overly so, but very good.
Right.
And their detachments are thematically interesting enough, power level wise interesting enough that you actually kind of want to stay in faction and not go grab the Codex Space Marine detachments, which is how I felt the Divergent chapter should have been anyway.
But I want there to be a hard rule on that.
Not
just like,
we made these so much
you're
better.
Incentivized.
Yeah, right.
Like maybe there were a few detachments that are very generic from the core book that you can play,
like the Gladius or whatever.
But like the themed ones that are like, this is clearly meant to be White Scars, this is clearly meant to be Raven Guard, Iron Hand, whatever. Maybe make those ones like, successor chapters of these Divergent chapters don't get access to these ones. You get these First Company, you get Gladius, you get whatever, that kind of thing. I'd like to see some of that. Maybe now start to do it now that they're coming out. We've got Dark Angels and Blood Angels now, right? That's a couple of them.
Yeah.
Maybe come out and say that.
Yeah.
Something.
Maybe when you get around, I guess we just had Pariah Nexus, but I was going to say when you get around to your next swingy update for the system, be like, hey, Space Marines now, you can only use this. Right. Divergent chapters have to use their own book.
Right.
You have access, obviously, to generic Space Marine units. But what I was getting to there is, once Blood Angels is street legal, as far as we could tell, 40K has no Codex release until next year.
Right.
And then
there's nothing on the docket.
And then Age of Sigmar, once Skaven Stormcast Slaves come out, they have nothing until next year. So there's going to be this holiday period that I'm interested to see what they come up with, because it doesn't look like armies are getting any update.
What's also really weird is there's nothing scheduled for Warcry either. When even that last preview we saw, was the Nova one, the online one, whatever, where they gave the road maps.
Yeah,
the road maps. They were going through like the different game systems where it's like, hey, this game is getting this, and we've got this coming out, and this one's getting this. Then you got the Warcry, and they're like, and Warcry, you just got that other box. Anyway,
in other games,
and it was like, no roadmap. You had a box that came out quietly. Maybe a couple weeks ago. I don't remember where it was, but it had those like...
the Vine Sylvaneth
the Vine Sylvaneth and the Bone Reaper
Centaur
warband,
Yeah.
which I never saw. I need to pick one of those up. I don't remember where it even coming in, but it's got like the tree that is a toilet or whatever.
Yep.
You flush stuff. You just like chuck bodies into the tree and you feed it and it protects you. But it's like that's the final piece of the Gur army, the terrain set, whatever. Before the next season, or maybe the game just fucking gets cut. I don't know, because it kind of feels like that, where it's like, well, we're not planning anything going forward with this. We have nothing scheduled. I can see it being like, and we're done.
Well, and
all the war bands are like, they don't want people buying them because you can't reinforce the units in the game proper. Like it's just odd.
It is, and I think what might end up ultimately happening, because it was in a weird spot where it was like, well, is this AOS Kill Team or is it AOS Necromunda? Because it was set in a place different from where the main wars take place.
Right.
The units could like level up over time, like in Necromunda, but then it was small single unit like Kill Team. I think it just never had a home. And so what they might do is just some of the units might find a permanent place in AOS.
Like they rebox them
and then the game will be done.
Yeah.
Because I think Underworlds will still go because it seems popular in the season format. But Warcry, maybe that was just a failed experiment.
Right. I don't think it failed. I think it's cool. The
It is
models
cool.
are
It is
some
cool.
of the best models they come out with
And
for AOS.
we got a ton of terrain because of it. Yeah.
But yeah, I could totally see that being like, all right, we're done now.
Yeah, we tried it.
You know, like we'll rebox some of the units that we had introduced in Warcry, and they'll be for the regular armies, but we're not going to release anymore. We're done.
Yeah.
Which would be fine if that frees up production time and it frees up space in the schedule for real releases. That'd be okay if that's the sacrifice we have to make.
Yeah.
You know, whatever. I mean, we've got Spearhead now too, so like Spearhead kind of
And
fulfills
Spearhead's doing really well.
It kind of fulfills the role of something kind of a smaller scale game like that.
It does.
So.
And it's almost like an arena game, like Spearhead, because it's on such a small space. And so I actually think it competes with, like, whenever you go to Adepticon and you have these companies that made models but didn't usually have games, Creature Caster, and their affiliates, Kingdom Death, and they have this like arena style game. It's like Spearhead competes almost directly with those, and it's probably going to do better. And as we saw today in our own store, to our surprise, there was a Magic the Gathering RCQ going on for the modern format, and yet the miniatures tables were full. And two of the games, maybe more, that got played were Spearhead.
There were 3 Spearheads going on simultaneously. There was a couple playing down.
Yeah, two had divided one of the tables.
There was 4 people playing at the same table.
One had Sons of Bahamut and Spearhead.
Yeah, we had another group playing a full game of AOS. We took over a table and played a game of AOS. It was me and another person there to play some full AOS, and then another game of AOS took over once.
That was a 1,000-point game.
The Spearheads were done, so it was like good. That's great. And then obviously there was a few 40K games going on at the same time. So that was awesome. And then also MCP, always MCP.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always one. And but that was great because a lot of people were talking specifically about the tournament we plan to run on October 5th at the shop for AOS. And so they're getting excited. They're playtesting games. New guys are playing, and they started like we recommend with Spearhead, which such a great way in. Yeah. And so that could be another reason why Warcry just maybe goes away, because they've got their small game and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of some of those other things, there are some rumors going on.
Rumors
that we've kind of heard about. But especially I've been keeping my ear out for AOS stuff. Rumors for them. Because
I think there's stuff they're not telling us coming soon.
I do. I mean, there are some rumor engines and stuff that are a little weird that kind of I think confirm some of this stuff. But there's quite a few things that maybe not a surprise, but maybe are coming sooner than we think. There were some mysteries on the roadmap that they weren't saying. Some chaos stuff coming up, some death stuff coming up. We won't tell you any more about it right now, kind of thing. One of them, though, is I think a pretty reliable rumor is people have been calling for Chaos Dwarves for AOS for a while as a new faction.
Well, they used to have the Legion of Asgore from Forge World,
correct,
including a unique to AOS unit in Chartor the Executioner.
Well, I think the Bull Centaurs were AOS
I think
models
you're right.
that never had rules for old fantasy either. Because they had Chartor.
What about the Kadai Fireborn?
Well, the Kadai Fireborn, I think, had old.
Did they?
They had old fantasy rules.
Chartor and his Bull Centaurs.
Same with the Fire Incarnate. Yeah. Same with the Earthshaker Cannon. The
I know the vehicles,
the Castellans, all that
yeah.
stuff, and then Drazor the Ashen, which is the guy riding the Taurox.
Who's in Total War.
Yeah. I think all those actually had rectangle square bases for fantasy, but Chartor and
I know for sure
the
Shard
Bull-
tried
and
it
the Bull
because
Centaur, I'm not
he was
sure.
actually the only character series that
Right.
they did for AOS.
Yeah.
And so he came in a Primarch style box.
But there was him, and there was the generic
Tanaric.
the Taric, and then those centaurs. So I'm not sure. I can't say for 100%, but he was the same aesthetic as them, and I feel like they were specific for AOS.
Well,
maybe not. I don't remember.
And so we've also seen that some of them have appeared in the fluff.
Yeah.
They're different than how we remember them in Old World a bit, but
As well as they should be. I mean, like, it's the same with dispossessed dwarves.
Yes,
It's the same
yes.
with dark elves. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to see those really anymore. Give them their own version for AOS.
the AOS version. And so it'll be new characters probably if they do. But we heard, I think back in 3, that there were rumors they were working on those.
Yeah.
And so it could just be their time's
Well,
coming.
it's funny. There's rumors about a lot of things that just haven't panned out, really. Like, like we were talking about dark elves. I mean, we had rumors that they're going to be shadow elves from
Malarian
Malarian
and-
for a long time, and that's not panned out. There was that really cool teaser trailer it was actually for Warcry. Was it Red Harvest? Where they had the spider.
The Spider Queen.
It was a spider faction warband that were like, something skitters in the dark. Find out more at Warhammer Community. And like there was that really eerie sort of article, and then nothing came of that.
No.
We were expecting some weird like Spider Queen god, minor god, something to come of, and just petered out. Nothing. That was years ago. I don't expect anything to come from that now.
But I could see them, because if you consider like the number of factions Death has, Order obviously has a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Destruction, Chaos. Death, Destruction, Chaos don't have a ton of factions, but it'd be a cool way to expand Chaos if you then did, here's the Hashut guys,
Right.
and you give us a new version of Chaos Dwarves, new monsters for them. Maybe they make a plastic version of the Bull Centaur guy now, who knows? Right. Or, and then they could even, that old Warcry Horns of Hashut cult unit.
That was not out for very long before they where they announced this is being discontinued from, whatever. From
now you can bring them in.
Maybe that's a kit that they're going to be like, remember this kit? But we retired. Just kidding. It's going to be part of this army for Hashut. Hashut isn't just dwarfs anymore.
Right.
They
have a cult. And they don't, they're their own chaos like Skaven, and so they don't provide benefits to like the Slaves to Darkness. Right. So they have their own Hashut thing.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
But one of the rumors said that first they would get an Underworld's Warband as their first,
which is a great way to sneak them in.
Peak of it.
Yeah.
I think there was a rumor that the next season of Underworlds was actually going to feature a new Stormcast Warband versus a Skaven one. Molder themed.
Okay.
With maybe,
which are popular right now.
Maybe like a wolf rat in the unit that's then going to be
precursor.
A precursor to more Molder units and more stuff coming out,
mm-hmm.
which I think would be super cool. I kind of suspect that that's what we're going to do with some of that Underworld stuff. Because
we always talked about when Underworld started, they always had such unique ideas for some of the minis and the styles that it was like, I wish they would expand on that in the army proper.
Right.
Like maybe don't bring that exact unit of 4 or 5 guys over, but use that design to make an element of the army.
Well, we know that in the 2 next books, there are going to be a couple of Underworld warbands that are given generic treatment.
Yep.
Newer kits for Underworlds that really haven't been out that long. Right. There's the Storm Coven, which is the 3 Thunderstrike armored wizards for Stormcast. That was like. It was worth. It was versus that weird Zinch guy. Remember with his all
Pan's
this weird,
Labyrinth looking guy.
That guy. And it wasn't out for very long. And it was just like, all right, now they're getting cut. It's like that's weird. But now there's a Storm Coven unit in the book coming out that's gonna be like, okay, well that's that unit given generic rules. They're not named characters anymore. They're not heroes. They're toned back. The Plague Pack, which is Scabix Plague Pack, which is the priest with the couple monks and a censer bearer is going to be in the new Skaven book, but as a generic Plague Pack unit, not named.
Well, and we equated it to Gabapalooza and Gloomspike. It's because they used to be a named, or each guy was like a character. Now in this edition, they scrapped that and said it's a 5-man unit that counts as priest 1.
Yeah.
Even though each guy looks unique, it's as long as one guy's alive, they still can do their thing.
Right. And I wonder if it's going to be something like that with. Again, other ones that are recent, right?
Yeah.
The Slaves of Darkness book is coming out shortly after. I've always wanted that the Wilder people that had a little war band of Dark Oath. maybe they'll get a generic treatment and they'll be a thing in there.
The Blades of Corn, they got the priest Underworld's Warband that wasn't that old and has been seen at Golden Demon
drums, whatever.
I still have it unassembled.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I wonder if they're going to get some of that.
Just remove their names, make them just a unit. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's cool. I mean, like, I own a lot of them, and I'd love to see that happen.
Well, they have... I like the idea because at least with Gabapalooza, it's such utility. They're inexpensive. You get a lot of wounds for the points because of the way that unit's structured.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're either a priest or a wizard or something like that is, in the game, we found very quickly
it also,
very, very handy.
It also works with this new rule set because you're also... because your army has access to these lores, they're not given enhancements. It doesn't break the rules of like, well, it's not a hero. You don't get to cast the spells from the lores. No, it's like, no, the army gets the lore.
Yeah.
The army gets this thing. Like, it all works within the framework of these new rules.
Yeah.
So I think it works. Take out some of the punch, take out some of the uniqueness of it because some of them are like ridiculously good, like too good. And so like take some teeth out of them, make them a little worse, make them a little cheaper.
And make them a generic, can't be reinforced unit. And I think they've got cool utility, and it makes the game, I guess, less cookie cutter.
Right.
Where I don't have to keep just spamming the same thing. It's like, well, I've got 100 points left over. I can grab this random, really unique little unit that can hide and can cast and yeah.
Well, my other thought is maybe that this unit would be a unit. What's it called? Regiment of Renown. Is another way they could do it. Right, it's because we've got things like Bran's Oathbound and Neve Blacktalon and the Black Talons, right? Those units are unique ones that can be brought as allies for other units. That's how they're doing the allies. Well, maybe we'll see something like these units are the Regiments of Renown. That's a way to bring some utility to another army by here's an allied unit. You can't take most of the stuff, but here's a few allied things that we've set up for you to be able to bring. Yep. That would be super cool, I think. Then you could have something like, well, now you've got a very controlled way of bringing this specific thing, and then here's some new life. Maybe if you give them even cool new rules, unique rules, and make them a little more powerful. Well, you're limited to just one ally. Like you're not gonna be able to like min-max and bring these crazy things all together.
And you can't adjust what's in that regiment. Right. You can only bring that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think that'd be cool. And then, if it's an ally, in terms of game rules, that adds another regiment to your army. Basically another drop. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you're taking it, it's basically like an auxiliary unit. You're increasing your number of drops so that it's going to be harder for you to control the first turn of the game, which is very, I think, is a tactic you can use to try to influence, like, the flow. But I think it's something you could also just play around not getting first. Priority, having your opponent dictate things for you, and just playing around that. So I don't know. I think it's a very interesting thing they could do. We'll see if it pans out that way. Because like the lack of allies is a little bit of a bummer. There's only like a few things that actually can be crossing armies, But those Underworld warbands would be great candidates for that.
Yeah.
So we had that. The Horns of Hashut army, some kind of Chaos Dwarves, all that maybe tying together into something. That would be super cool.
Yeah, it would.
We had.
I bet it would be really popular immediately too.
I know there were rumors and talks about maybe the fact that they cut Beasts of Chaos makes room for another Beastmen faction, even though it's not Beastmen. It's not even Beastmen of Chaos potentially. It would be sort of a destruction-themed Beast people army,
right?
Rallying around Kragnos and Kragnos' people. That'd be also kind of cool to see.
And then like how Nagash can be fielded by the 4 different death factions or however many there are,
right.
Then you'd have Kragnos the same way, where he can be in a bunch, and one of them's like really his people.
Right. Because I kind of feel like that's the way for maybe the Ossiarch Boom Reapers. That's actually Nagash's home faction. Even though he can be taken in, so like Gravelords, he can be taken in, anywhere else. So that was some of the rumors. There was another rumor about something else interesting in the story and how that's going to develop. Speaking of Nagash, there was a story of, was it season 2? Second edition, I think, when he was trying to do his plans to...
His Necroquake?
Yeah, the Necroquake was a result of his failing. where he was trying to create his pyramid of Nagash again and invert the realm of Shaiish and centralize the power of the realm into the center of the realm instead of the edges, so he can harness it and kill everyone and harvest all their souls.
Right.
That was his ultimate like doomsday sort of event that he was planning. Well, it got foiled, and so obviously it didn't succeed. But was it Malign Portents was part of it? I think that was where like the endless spells
where we got all those
and stuff like that. But his plan was foiled by the Skaven. Like that was one of the short stories. Was like this. It kind of made him sound like a SEAL Team 6 kind of group of Skaven that were this elite Eshin, hired guns that were going to go in and do this thing. And you're like reading the story, and you're like, well, what are they going to do? What are they do? They're infiltrating in this place. They were just stealing loot.
Yep.
They're going in and just stealing gems and jewels.
But those gems were arranged in a very specific way for Nagash to do his spell.
And so his whole plan, it failed. It was foiled by the Skaven.
Yep.
Well, the Skaven now have enacted their own machinations, and they're succeeding at what they're trying to do. But the Skaven have thwarted Nagash throughout the ages. I mean, like, all the stories of like Nagash's downfall have all been the Skaven. His first death at the hands of his brother was because the Skaven broke in, armed his brother who he had imprisoned, and his brother killed him with a weeping blade, basically the fell blade. I think is what the weapon was called. Which there's a new warlord called
the foul blade.
Critic foul blade.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's maybe that demon weapon that he's wielding is something of legend that would be kind of cool. That would be a way to tie back into the old stories of being like he sees that and he's like, mother.
Yeah.
I recognize that
stupid
sword.
Yep.
And so there was like rumors about him kind of being a main part of the story and maybe even being a good guy and teaming up with the good guys in order to thwart the Skavens.
He teamed up with them to try and fight Archaon before. So
So there were some rumors of that, which I thought was super interesting. That's an interesting idea.
Well, and furthering one rumor we talked about where we don't think Stormcast and Skaven are going to be done with these initial releases just because of choice verbiage like, every model for the next year. And then you think it's possible that Clan Pestilence, Clan Eshin might get stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah. I fully expect something in those clans that didn't get any representation to get something.
And we heard about, because they're keeping them around. Yeah. And then we heard about Dark Oath, we know are getting their own spearhead, but they might get more than what they've got.
Correct. I'm hoping that's the case too. Because like again, their army feels a little lacking to be like a full, all-encompassing army. Because it's like they don't interact with a lot of the different parts of the book or parts of the army's rules. There's no priests.
Yeah.
There's no wizards.
Well,
really.
and while they expanded the Slaves to Darkness roster quite a bit, and they have their own detachment in the army, really there's not many ways you build them where you feature the Dark Oath at all. You know, and that's a shame because you got all these cool new models.
And I think they're pretty good, but it's like they don't themselves make for a great...
you can't really feel just an all Dark Oath army.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you could, but...
They're all made out of t-shirts and...
but there's also... we know that on the roadmap there was... maybe Gloomspite Gitz was getting a new spearhead, but I think they might be getting not just a spearhead, but a new army box. That expands another aspect of Gloomspite, because that was another rumor. It's like, hey, Gloomspite Gitz isn't just... it's a lot of different beasts in their arsenal.
You have squigs, you have trogs.
I mean, technically, the spiders are still there, even though they've been not really looked at. They're very old, except the Arachnarok. The Arachnarok, I think, is while is a fantasy model, is still in a phenomenal kit. That one is so good.
And it's old, but it holds up.
The spider does.
Yes.
The goblins riding the spider, not so much.
But you know what wouldn't surprise me is when they get around to their battle tome, if they actually did cut them back to Old World.
Yeah.
And the reason would be because they got a brand new unit last time around, but that had no support around it and nothing that shared keywords, and it was their Wolf Riders.
Yeah, and we even had a couple of rumor engines that were revolved around
looked very similar,
like the harnesses of those wolves. So I think maybe the next Gloomspite Gitz update box set, spearhead, whatever it might be, Gitz proper. Right, we'll get some actual regular goblins. Maybe one's riding wolves. Maybe a character leading them. That kind of like support. Maybe some artillery. Hell,
and even their base night goblins or moon goblins or whatever really need updating.
Right,
that's an old kit, and so they might get that treatment that we've seen where the core infantry unit gets a reboot, like Clan Rats, like Termagants, like, and then they expand the wolf riding line and just kind of phase out the spiders.
Yeah. Which, that could absolutely be a replacement. Yeah. Right? Like,
there's your fast-moving...
A big-ass, dire wolf instead of a spider. Yep. Any kind of wolf riders that can replace your spider riders. Like, any of that kind of stuff.
Now you've got your speed, your whatever.
Yeah. So I think that'd be great. I think that'd be super cool.
I don't think anyone would be too disappointed with that.
Is it going to be, accurate?
There'd be the 4 people who only play the Spider Fang part,
right?
Who would be mad.
Who does that?
Yeah, they would do it. They'd come out. They would come out. Anything, a single unit could get cut from an army, and people say they built their whole army around that. So they always come out. But sometimes it's time.
It cracks me up so much how those kind of, because those players do kind of come out of the woodworks sometimes.
Yeah, and they get loud.
When it's like, hey, here's a change. Well, I hate this. This is my one and only army that I've ever played, and I've collected it for my entire life. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they're cutting it.
And I spammed that unit.
Like, I've been loyal for this whole... And they're getting rid of it. It's just like, oh my God. Like, no. Press F to doubt.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like,
I never saw you play a game. You never talked about the game. So. This one unit gets cut, and now you come out. Yeah.
But it's kind of that culture of just complaining and we had talked last week about just rallying around the negativity. It's just like everyone's experiencing a little bit of dismay out of things being cut, or even if they don't play an army, right? If they don't play an army, they don't play a faction. They've never collected it. It's always kind of been there, but you see it go away, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, that feels awful. You kind of feel down a little bit. I mean, I've experienced that. It was like, oh man, all these old Stormcast stuff's going away. Oh, that's kind of a bummer. Even though I had some of them, and I've never really liked them or put them on the table. I've always played like the Warrior Chamber stuff, even though I had a lot of Sacrosanct. But it's like, oh, now I can't. No. But people are like that about armies they don't have, and they end up coming out and being like, wow, I've always been a fan. It's like, oh yeah, how many points worth do you have? Oh, I don't have any.
What were you a fan of?
Exactly.
Just their existence. Okay.
We had, it was really funny. We had, what was it? Like a legitimate offer for people like locally, where people were complaining about something getting cut and it wasn't good anymore. And it's their favorite thing and they've been playing it for the same spiel. And we're like, oh, well, if you want to get rid of them, I'll buy them off from you. Because I still really like them. I'll take them. And they're like, oh, well, actually, I really don't.
And our local store owner actually started reaching out to people on the internet, on Facebook pages, who were saying, this army is now going to collect dust because they made my dreadnoughts or whatever unplayable. And so he goes, I'll buy them off you right now. And then the guy goes, well, I don't actually own any. I don't know. Oh. But you wanted to be a part of that. You wanted to be a part of that negative. And you see it when they go on to, you've got people on Twitch who are painting Warhammer figures or playing games. And those people are in the chat and they just want to join into that complaint with the content creator. And, you watch that content creator try to shrug it off. And you're right. We can't talk about that every week, but the sharing in the negativity doesn't make sense.
It cracks me up so much.
But these rumors are all exciting because maybe they've got a new release model they're going to approach for AOS, or AOS will be the guinea pig for a new release style where maybe every army gets touched during the year somehow. Mm-hmm. Like, even if it's not their proper Battle Tome release at that time, it's like, well, this army, we've got an idea, so let's give Nighthaunt something, let's give Gloomspite something, let's give whatever something, when they've got an idea for it. I don't know. Maybe it'll work. But we haven't had an errata, an FAQ, or a rules pass yet for the new edition.
And the new edition's been out for a minute, right? It's been a couple months at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's time we do get something, right? And I would not be surprised if it's like some glaring issues get fixed. Mostly, I mean, it's not just points.
No.
Right? We generally try to balance the game based on points, but it doesn't always work, right?
No.
Like, no amount of points cuts can fix some things. And so it's like, sometimes you just need to make actual changes to an army's rules, to a unit's rules.
Like we saw them do in the short term for Drukhari in 40K, where they flat out said, well, we can't just cut it points until you're playing 200 models on the table, and sure, you win by that, but then they don't feel like they're supposed to. So they had to drastically change the way some of the rules worked.
Right.
and that was refreshing to see them do that. What's weird is that is a precedent. The GW re-examining not only rules balances with their games consistently, but new ways to try and rebalance consistently.
Right.
And yet 6-7 years into this mentality, this philosophy, and we still hear the people do their like, oh, so GW's actually listening to people. Oh, so they're actually doing so. Oh, they're not classic GW.
Classic GW, not listening to the community.
Yeah.
Because like we had an older guy, because we were playing some games today.
Yep.
Well, like I said, it was popping. We actually played a 2,000 point game.
Yep.
And got that out of the way. It was just for the details. Slaves of Darkness. We were trying out some stuff.
Yep.
Versus some Gloomspite Gits, and they've got some pretty archetypical way to play their armies. You know,
Yeah.
You've got goblins to hold the line and trolls to do all the heavy lifting.
They do so much damage.
They're so great. So very like a trog herd
Yeah.
themed sort of thing. Even though we didn't do any regiment or army of renown or anything.
No.
Just troll heavy. I think we tied.
Yeah, it was, everything died.
It was
Yeah.
fine. Everything was dead. We swapped objectives one time and we just tied the game. But there was an older guy who came over who was exactly like that. Where he came over and was like, hey, what are you guys playing? And we're like, oh, we're playing this. It's like, oh, is that the fantasy version of 40K? It's like, yeah, you could call it that, basically. And he's like, oh, is that the one where they're not doing all original fantasy anymore? We're like, well, actually, if you want it, it's
They have the old world
the old
now,
world
yeah.
is that. It's basically a new edition of those old rules, and you can still get them on squares and rectangles and play that just like you could before. And he's like, oh, yeah. Like he didn't have a good example. He's like, as we were like, this game is so much cleaner. It's got like.
Well, you showed him an example of the rules glossary in the back of the General's Handbook, and for those who have it for Age of Sigmar, it is so clean and such a handy thing to look at.
Well, if you're familiar with Magic, it's like almost like stack.
Like you have a stack.
You've got timings for things. You've got order of operations. You've got when you can use these things, whose turn it is, determines who goes first, and reactions, and all. Like it's all very well defined.
Yeah.
And so it's like we kind of showed him that, and we told him that, and he's like, oh, so they're finally listening to people. It's like, what do you mean?
Yeah. Well, and he even like caught himself almost sounding interested. Yeah. And then stop to say that.
Yeah.
And like I can't say something positive. And that comment in particular to say they're finally listening to people. Well, I'm going to say this up front. I never heard people asking for that in the game.
Exactly.
Clarification,
for sure.
Yes. But like for them to set up the rules this way, which they did with AOS, no, that was them, and it's great. Yeah. It was like more than we expected.
Right.
Yeah,
but and so
couldn't even give it a compliment.
But it was so funny because he's like, oh, okay, because it was clearly like it sounded interesting to him, and he's like, oh, all right, well,
yeah,
well, I'll just get in the way if I keep talking to you guys. I'll let you get back to it.
Yeah,
because he didn't have anything else to complain about. He was like, he excused himself so he could like find. He almost put it on us to be like, oh, well, we're telling him to leave and get away because we're too distracted by him. And it's like, no, we'll pause our game and talk to you.
We'll talk to you about this all day.
Let's do it.
Get people excited.
So it's, I don't know. It's that kind of mentality. It's really, really funny to me. Oh, classic GW. It's like, it's been like 10 years, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like wake up a little bit,
Yeah.
Like it's been different for a long time. And so saying classic is like, if it were something really dumb that GW used to do, it's like, yeah, okay, classic GW.
Classic GW.
I get it. But not like, they're up to their same tricks. It's like,
they're really not.
They're really not.
Yeah.
It's very different.
And they're now on a like several year run of doing better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cracks me up. Cracks me up. Classic.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, really funny. But yeah, we had a really good time today. Like you said, the community's popping. We got a tournament coming up. A lot of people trying to, and like we were talking to people a lot of people play Stormcast. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
Stormcast, the poster boys of this,
and it's
game.
It's a quick entry because there's a million starter boxes where you can get Stormcast.
But there's a million different ways to play it. You don't have to play the same way as anyone. No. There was a game they were playing 1,000 points, and it was 2 Stormcasts, and they were just vastly different lists. And like the lists I've all built look nothing like those. The one I'm taking to the tournament looks nothing like that. Like I've got a ton of lists that just don't use any of the new stuff that I think are very reasonable. Like hell, even the soon to be Legends Sacrosanct army of play style looks really, really good, and it'll be good for next year. You know, like I kind of wanted to play something in that vein.
I mean, they do have an advantage of like Space Marines, where they just have the thickest roster of units, more than anybody else, and so they can play a number of different ways. So yeah, that is good to see that even though there's a lot of people around here playing them, they're playing different versions of them.
Yep.
Because you can.
Yeah. That's great.
And they are, like I said, easy to access because there's a million different starter boxes that have Stormcast in them.
Yep.
But even then, I also heard some people getting excited about painting stuff, or those are the only models they want to bring, or the ones they have painted.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I think that is an exciting prospect for me, right? Because people want to get stuff painted, get stuff done, to get better, and only play with painted models. Because so many times we see, especially at our local tournaments, most tournaments really, people have a very play mindset.
Yep.
Right. I'm going to put this army together. I'm going to build a list that's optimal for this tournament I'm playing. I don't care how well it's painted. I'm going to get it the colors on it that I need to be able to qualify for the painting rubric, and just play. Now, because we do a lot of the painting judging during a lot of these tournaments, and it's like, man, there's like a 1 in 5 armies is actually painted to any kind of standard that's like something I would call painted. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Because like, yes, there is paint on the models. True. Is it a painted army? Not really. You know, and so the fact that people are excited to like get behind the models and paint the models, and like to then play them is great.
And we had gotten in a new rack of I would call them paint accessories.
Sure.
We the store got the AK Interactive partnership, and so all of the basing material and then their enamels and their pigments all came in. And they're fantastic products. We each got some. We're all going to play around with them. Mm-hmm. Maybe do a video or something and show different ways to use them. And while I was setting that up today, people were coming over to get paints. They have their little list that they found somewhere online of paints to get, and then they're asking me questions about it. And then when I was showing them how to use them, they get excited about that. Like, oh, I can just like pin wash with one of these enamel things. It's like, yep. And then they got excited about that. And so these people were grabbing handfuls of paint, getting excited, and they were gathered around the tables where all of us were playing, just yucking it up. And so getting them interested in that more than just list building, I think is great too.
I kind of feel like I want to run more events that are geared towards that type of player too, right? Ones that are like they're events that
I think that's certainly a way to attract a bigger audience.
Yeah, you know, to be fun, not just like tournament, because tournament and tournament mindset and tournament players can be a real turnoff to some more casual people, right? Casual players. Like that's why I try to gravitate to like the narrative events when I go to tournaments and like events,
team events, and
that kind of stuff. Because it's like you encounter a different type of person at those. Usually, it's not like the hardcore tournament goer. It's a person who's passionate about an army that they're putting together, and it's usually got some kind of story to it. And while you might not want to hear it, they have it, you know, and that makes them excited about their current project they're working on, and they add to it. And, you know,
and I like both, and so I do like the idea that we want to host a big competitive event maybe next year for AOS, but then have these ones that are smaller, that are more accessible to the casual player. But the one thing I notice is like when we go to a big convention and so you have thousands of people playing, you obviously get a bigger sample size, but it's in the casual events where you see armies that are painted much better than you see in the main events. And because they're not just gamers, they've taken their time to make it look the way they want, to have the story they want, to convert the way they want. They build a display board that's fabulous. And then like they know even if they go in and they're going to go 2 and 2 in their thing or whatever, 1 and 2, it looks fantastic. And that can be, so we're trying to encourage both. We want people who want to play the game hardcore because they'll always get into the next new thing. They'll keep buying. But we want to encourage the hobbyist and the casual player because they'll buy into it for totally different reasons. And
they'll go back and they'll buy old stuff because they got a new project they're working on.
A conversion idea. All these new paint racks we have and all these accessories we now have there, they're going to eat it up. They'll be addicts to that, right? you're talking to one. So so that I think is exciting. Get everybody excited on both the hobby side, the competitive side, the casual in between side.
Yeah.
You know,
I kind of want to have some pretty like minor painting competitions even, and just not have have a game associated with an event, right? I want to do like, because we've got a Discord that's community Discord that's kind of taken off a little bit for our store, but like people are excited and they're
where can people find that?
They're showing our progress. I don't know.
Okay, never mind.
I don't know. Maybe I'll have a link in
Okay.
the video's description if you want to join our Discord. We do ask that you're polite and not disruptive.
Yep.
Obviously, but we will ban you.
Yes.
It is for constructive criticism. It's for progress. It's for actual game finding for the local.
Yep, and find ways to play. Yeah.
It's not just memes and bitching and all that stuff. But a lot of people are, especially newer painters, are getting excited about painting for the first time and ramping it up. And it's like, a casual painting competition, maybe at a few months between sort of basis, could really, I feel like, stoke that enthusiasm, that passion, or even inspire new passions in people. To be like, you have this time frame, what can you do? Let me see what you experiment with some stuff. Like, let me see what you can come up with. Because I like that idea, is like challenges, right? To get better at painting. Because I was talking about today that I kind of fall into a rut where I have ways to paint things, whether it's skin or like metallics or whatever, that I just kind of do that method over and over again, even across different armies. And they start looking
even when the color scheme's different,
right, they start looking too similar, and it's like I need to change it up. I need to find striking, ways to differentiate, even similar models, and make them look different, make them pop without, vastly changing what I'm doing. Because I like the color schemes I'm using, but they need to be different. I just need to figure out a way to do that, and then replicate it on a large army scale. That's the other thing. Yeah, one of the inspirations you got was you looked at a Varangard that I played today that I had started painting like 6 years ago. Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was like when they were relatively new. It might have been 7 years ago, and I never got back around to finishing it. But you liked. There was something about what it looked like, where it was this moody, gray black,
kind of like dusty gray black on the armor. And it's like, I've always kind of liked that sort of armor style on the Chaos. I went sort of metallic.
Yep.
Maybe a little too silver on mine that I'm currently doing. But I need to knock it back and make it darker, because they are evil.
Yep.
They're a little too
and
bright.
They don't polish their armor
and
much.
They're too similar to my Stormcast. My Stormcasts are like questing knights, so they're also silver. But I also want to change the silver on them to be more like beaten steel, like really beat up steel, so where it's almost got some browns in the undertones, something like that. So working on some of that kind of stuff, not falling into the complacency and the comfortable painting ideas that I always fall back on.
And sometimes that can be difficult to get out of. Like I know one area where Moose struggled when he was trying to think of what he would do.
Kira, stop. Relax. Sit down.
All right, dog. One area where Moose was struggling to find, who's local proprietor, what he wants to do for Golden Demon in March. Mm-hmm. And he sat down and started doing something, and he always can start off patient and taking the time he wants on something, but he spends so much of his painting energy during the year on getting something ready for play.
Right.
So he's always getting an army, a warband, MCP team, whatever it is, for some game he's getting ready to play a tournament for. And so he gets in that mode of like his assembly line mode, which looks great, but he knows he can't do that for competition, but he's done it for so long that he's fallen into so many of these habits that while he's doing a piece that he wants to be display or competition level, he falls into some of those habits because he's not seeing progress on the model quick enough. Mm-hmm. He's not slowing down. And so he wants to like break that habit. And so that's an interesting thing.
Habit.
And so that's something sometimes a painter needs to do when they're in a rut. They need to know when to break it.
Well, and like experimenting with some new materials, like we were talking with the AK stuff. We did the color swatch challenge a couple months ago. That was super. I kind of want to do that again.
That was good.
I actually had my wife paint a model for me one day, and I used the paint scheme she used on that model to then use it as a template for the rest of the models in that unit.
Right.
Like, I just not even deciding your own paint scheme, just let someone else do it, and then just continue it on. Like anything to break up what the norm is, you know. Yeah. Just because, like, you're right. It's like you fall in those ruts where it's like I'm just gonna fall back when I'm comfortable with again.
And I think it's fine when you are assembly line and stuff, but sometimes when you want an army to look different than the previous one you just did, or you're doing something that's more for yourself and not just to get it done, you have to like know when to reach for other techniques, reach for other materials, try something you haven't.
Or take some time to learn something new.
To learn something new, a new process, and slow yourself down. Because that's just it. You're not going to screw it up as long as you're using thin paint. So you can keep trying.
In fact, it's almost impossible. I mean,
it's really tough.
That's actually something I've been seeing on social media a little bit recently, which I thought was really funny. The idea that it's impossible, like experiment because it's almost impossible to ruin your model. Whether it's, I mean, I'm not talking about like through stripping the paint off or anything like that, but it's as long as you're doing the correct consistency.
Unless you're using thick, goopy, change the actual texture and detail, like you're going to be fine.
You can fix most mistakes. You can fix most color schemes you've done by painting over them with a different color. You can fix any of this stuff if you don't like it.
And you can even almost like re-prime them with an airbrush because the airbrush primer goes on so thin, and then you can just build back. Yeah. Go back again.
So yeah, what I'm saying is don't be afraid to experiment with your models.
It's never truly messed up.
No.
We've shown plenty of people you can fix it. Yeah. But yeah. And we like fixing that. We like putting it together and showing people that even though it feels like a mess, even though it feels disjointed, it all comes together, fits nicely on one plate.
Yeah, right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end.
Yeah, all the elements and components build to an experience.
Mm-hmm. Hit every area of the tongue.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I could eat.
I could delight all areas of the tongue.
Yeah.
Let's
eat.
Thanks for joining. We hope you enjoyed. Follow us for more of our weekly episodes on YouTube podcasts, Spotify, and Podbean. You can follow myself and Llama on Instagram. We are at Llama Paints Minis and Hyena Paints Minis. Music provided by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. And as always, we'll catch you next time.